Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the lightning round. Competitive EDH is about the most powerful cards in one of the most powerful formats, and tonight we are going to show exactly what that means. The rules are simple. First to win 2 matches wins the lightning round. We are firing off in fast order, so make sure to stay tuned and keep up as we go. We have 4 fighters bringing a variety of decks to the table, and we will soon see who is king at the competitive EDH table. Let's start off by showcasing our fighters this evening. First off, we have Ryan. This season, Ryan has shown off his love for monocolored decks, and has brought decks like Yisan the Wanderer Bard and Godo Bandit Warlord. He loves offbeat combos like the World Gorger Dragon and infinite attack steps through Godo Helm of the Host. He has 2 wins so far and hopes to wrap this up with his 3rd win. In his first match tonight, he brings Godo Bandit Warlord. Next up, we have Mike. Mike loves 4-colored decks and to solve puzzles. His affinity through card advantage through his graveyard has shown in his Tymna Thrasios and Gitrog monster decks. Mike also has 2 wins under his belt and would like to claim a 3rd win of his own. In his first match tonight, he brings Tymna and Thrasios. After that, we have Don. Don loves infinite combos and the intricacy it takes to get them. He has a hard rule of not net decking when he brews, so when you see Don in action, it's 100% of his own creation. He is looking for his first win and hopes that tonight will finally bring him into the ranks. In his first match tonight, he brings Kess, Dissident Mage. Finally, we have Dylan. Dylan's first love is, and always has been, Una, Queen of the Fae. Never relenting and never switching, he has learned to pilot this deck with masterful skill. He is also looking for his first win, and hopes that tonight will be his chance. In his first match tonight, he brings his love, Una. Without further ado, let's kick off this raucous rendition of rather ready rowdy rivals. Don wins the game of Never Have I Ever and gets to start us off. Don plays a Scalding Tarn. He cracks it to find a Watery Grave into play untapped, taking 2 life. He plays a Preordain and then passes it to Mike. Mike plays an island for turn. He casts a Soul Ring. He follows it up with an Azorius Signet. After that, he ends his turn. Ryan plays an Ancient Tomb. He taps his tomb to play a Felwar Stone. All wrapped up, he passes. Dylan plays a Command Tower. He attempts to cast a Mystic Remora. Mike responds by paying 2 life and casting Mental Misstep. With the spell countered, Dylan ships the turn to Don. Don plays a Polluted Delta. He cracks it to find a Volcanic Island. He follows up with a Felwar Stone of his own. With nothing else, he passes his turn. Mike taps all of his mana on his turn to cast Aetherflux Reservoir. Sitting pretty, he passes. Ryan plays a Mountain for turn. He then casts Panharmonicon. He then ends his turn. Dylan plays a Thespian Stage for turn. He then casts a Dimir Signet. All through, he passes. Don plays a Mana Confluence for turn. He then casts Dark Confidant. He then follows it up with a Limdul's Vault. He looks at the top 5, decides he doesn't like them, ships them to the bottom, looks at the next 5, likes what he sees, and arranges them accordingly. With nothing else, he ends his turn. Mike plays a Lion's Eye Diamond. He looks around at the board state and decides to pass. Ryan plays a Mountain for turn. He follows it up with a Boiling Seas. Everyone's islands are destroyed, and then Ryan smugly passes his turn. Dylan plays an Island for turn. He then taps 2 to make Thespian Stage become a copy of Ancient Tomb. After that, he ships the turn to Don. Don reveals a Command Tower through his Dark Confidant trigger. He plays his newly found Command Tower. He casts a Demonic Tutor and searches up a card and puts it into his hand. And since Ryan blew up the islands, Don attacks him with his Dark Confidant. He passes the turn. Mike also plays a Command Tower for turn. He then casts Tymna the Weaver. Finished up, he passes. Ryan plays a Mountain for turn. He then attempts to cast Godo, Bandit Warlord. Everyone checks their hands to see if they have an answer, but the Boiling Seas choke their blue mana. Godo resolves. His ability triggers twice through Panharmonicon. He first fetches up a Hammer of Nazan. He then fetches up a Helm of the Host, which equips to Godo automatically through the Hammer trigger. After that, he moves to attacks. Mike plays the Gitrog monster in this game. He keeps a hand with a Swamp, a Verdant Catacombs, a Bloodstained Mire, a Blasted Landscape, a Polluted Delta, a Dark Ritual, and a Splendid Reclamation. Ryan plays Yisan, the Wanderer Bard this game. He keeps a hand with Phyrexian Revoker, Elvish Archdruid, Yavimaya Hollow, Forest, Scrib Ranger, Manglehorn, and Rings of Brighthearth. Dylan is playing Una this game. He keeps a hand with Intuition, Dark Ritual, Chrome Mox, Felwar Stone, Mox Opal, Preordain, and a snow-covered swamp. Dawn is playing Animar this game, and he keeps a hand with Vizier of the Menagerie, Arbor Elf, Scalding Tarn, Solemn Simulacrum, Den Protector, Forgotten Ancient, and Beastcaller Savant. Mike gets to start us off. Mike plays a Verdant Catacombs. He cracks it to find a Bayou. He taps his Bayou and casts a Soul Ring. He passes the turn. Ryan plays a Forest and passes. Dylan plays a Snow-Covered Swamp. He casts a Chrome Mox. He then casts a Felwar Stone. He follows that up with a Mox Opal. Not finished up, he casts Dark Ritual, adding 3 black to his pool. He casts Intuition, targeting Dawn. He reveals a Pull from Tomorrow, an Ad Nauseam, and an Archaeomancer. Dawn chooses the Pull from Tomorrow. Finally finished, he passes. Dawn plays a Scalding Tarn. He cracks it for a Tropical Island. He then casts Arbor Elf. He passes the turn to Mike. At the end of Dawn's turn, Mike cycles a Blasted Landscape. Mike plays a Polluted Delta. He cracks it for an Overgrown Tomb into play untapped, taking 2 life. He then casts a Dark Ritual of his own. After that, the Gitrog monster hits the field. He plays a Bloodstained Mire as a second land for turn, and then ships the turn to Ryan. Ryan plays a Forest for turn and passes again. Dylan draws a card, observes the current board state, and decides to pass. At the end of Dylan's turn, Mike cracks his Bloodstained Mire for a swamp. He then pays 4 life and casts Dismember, targeting Arbor Elf. Dawn misses his land drop, sighs a bit, and passes. During his upkeep, Mike sacks a swamp to his Gitrog. He plays a Forest. He casts Harrow, sacrificing a forest. He fetches up 2 more forests and puts them onto the battlefield. He then casts Splendid Reclamation. The spell resolves and Mike puts 6 lands onto the battlefield tapped. He follows up by attacking Dylan with Gitrog. All finished, he passes. At the end of Mike's turn, Ryan flashes in a Scrib Ranger. Ryan plays an Ancient Tomb for turn. He taps his tomb to cast a Rings of Brighthearth. He passes. At the end of Ryan's turn, Dylan pulls from Tomorrow for 2, drawing 2 and discarding 1. Dylan plays a River of Tears for turn. He casts a Mystic Remora. Everyone groans heavily, and the fish resolves. He ends his turn. Dawn plays a Manamo, School at Water's Edge. He then casts a Beastcaller Savant. He passes. During his upkeep, Mike casts an Entomb. Dylan responds by casting a Swan Song, countering the spell. Mike then sacks a swamp to his Gitrog. Mike casts an Avenger of Zendikar. The Avenger enters, and 9 plants follow it onto the battlefield. He cracks his Verdant Catacombs to fetch up a forest. He cracks his Polluted Delta to fetch up a swamp. He then cracks his Bloodstained Mire to fetch up another swamp. He follows up by casting a Grisly Salvage. He reveals the top 5 of his library and decides to take a Tireless Tracker. He plays a swamp for turn. He casts his newly found Tireless Tracker. He plays a Wooded Foothills as his second land for turn. He cracks his Foothills for a forest. He then decides to attack Dylan again with Gitrog. Finally finished up, he ends his turn. Ryan plays a Yavimaya Hollow for turn. He casts Yisan the Wanderer Bard. He passes. At the end of Ryan's turn, Dylan casts a Mystical Tutor, fetching up a Cyclonic Rift. In response, Mike casts Nature's Claim, targeting Dylan's Felwar Stone, to make sure he doesn't have enough to cast his tutor target. Dylan plays a Sunken Hollow for turn. With his other plan thwarted, he passes. On Dawn's turn, he casts Animar, Soul of Elements. He passes to Mike. During Mike's upkeep, he sacks his Blasted Landscape to Gitrog. He casts an Underrealm Lich. He follows it up with a Scourge Familiar. Knowing what is about to follow, Dylan casts Read the Runes for 2, trying to find an answer. He does not find it, and the Scourge Familiar resolves. Mike discards a Glacial Chasm to a Scourge Familiar. A Gitrog trigger fires, and Underrealm Lich's triggered ability allows Mike to look at the top 3 and put 1 into his hand. He discards the other 2, one of them being a land, which triggers Gitrog again. He uses these 3 abilities to dig into his deck, gain 20 mana, and sink it into a Torment of Hailfire. Ryan is playing Thrasios and Vile Smasher this game, and keeps an opening hand with Cyclonic Rift, Lotus Petal, Careful Study, Snapcaster Mage, Mental Misstep, Volcanic Island, and Deathrite Shaman. Mike is playing Tymna and Thrasios this game, and keeps an opening hand with Elvish Mystic, Dramatic Reversal, Windfall, Priest of Titania, Mana Confluence, Command Tower, and Noxious Revival. Dylan is playing his Scion of the Ur-Dragon deck this game, and keeps an opening hand with Cinder Glade, Nim Deathmantle, Tanglewire, Plains, Scale Lord Reckoner, Perilous Vault, and a Swamp. Dawn is playing Kess this game, and keeps an opening hand with Night's Whisper, Negate, Chromatic Lantern, Felwar Stone, Chrome Mox, Mana Crypt, and an Island. And Dylan starts us off. Dylan plays a Plains for turn. He casts an Enlightened Tutor, fetching up a Sylvan Library onto the top of his library. He passes. Mike plays a Command Tower for turn. He casts a Mana Crypt. He follows it up with a Priest of Titania. He passes the turn. Ryan casts a Lotus Petal. He then plays an Overgrown Tomb into play untapped, taking 2 life. He then casts a Deathrite Shaman. He ships the turn to Dawn. Dawn plays an Island for turn. He casts a Mana Crypt of his own. He then casts Chromatic Lantern. He follows it up with a Chrome Mox. He then casts a Felwar Stone. All finished up, and his hand all but empty, he passes. Dylan plays a Swamp for turn. He casts a Nim Deathmantle. He passes. Mike plays a Mana Confluence for turn. He plays an Elvish Mystic. After that, he casts Windfall. Dawn, being the most excited out of all of them, has no responses. Everyone discards their hand and draws 5. He casts a Mana Vault and then passes the turn. Ryan plays a Swamp for turn. He casts a Trinket Mage. Trinket Mage fetches up a Mana Crypt. He casts his newly acquired Mana Crypt. He follows up with a Talisman of Impulse. All wrapped up, he passes the turn. Dawn plays a Polluted Delta for turn. He cracks it for an Underground Sea. He then casts Gutter Snipe. Afterward, he casts Spellseeker. His Spellseeker resolves, and Dawn fetches up a Dramatic Reversal. He then ends his turn. Dylan plays a Canopy Vista for turn. He then casts Farseek. He fetches up a Smoldering Marsh. He then ends his turn. Mike casts a Sylvan Library. After that, he casts Thrasios, Triton Hero. He gives the turn over to Ryan. At the end of Mike's turn, Ryan pays 4 life and casts Snuff Out, targeting Thrasios. Ryan plays a Verdant Catacombs. He cracks it for a Tropical Island. After that, he casts his own Thrasios. He then casts Imperial Seal, fetching up a card onto the top of his library and losing 2 life. He passes the turn to Dawn. Dawn plays an Island for turn. He casts his own commander, Kess, Dissonant Mage. He then casts Isochron Scepter. Ryan responds by activating Thrasios, scrying and revealing what he fetched up with Imperial Seal, which was a Force of Will. Ryan plays his Force of Will, but Dawn is ready and casts Pact of Negation. Force of Will gets countered, and the Isochron resolves. He puts Dramatic Reversal under it. He activates his Scepter to cast Dramatic Reversal infinite times, and triggering his Gutter Snipe. Mike is playing Tymna and Thrasios this game, and keeps an opening hand with Underground Sea, Marsh Flats, Underground River, High Tide, Mana Crypt, Bloom Tender, and Mental Misstep. Ryan is playing Godo this game, and keeps an opening hand with Hammer of Nazan, Mountain, Mox Opal, Worn Power Stone, Voltaic Key, and Chrome Mox. Dylan is playing Una this game, and keeps an opening hand with Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, Thespian Stage, Snow-Covered Swamp, Intuition, Soul Ring, Island, and Force of Will. Dawn is playing Kess this game, and keeps an opening hand with Time Spiral, Wheel of Fortune, Mana Vault, Ad Nauseam, Intuition, Dark Ritual, and Arid Mesa. And Mike starts us off. Mike plays a Marsh Flats for turn. He cracks it for a Bayou. He casts a Mana Crypt. He follows up by casting Bloom Tender. Dylan, seeing this getting out of control very quickly, decides to cast Force of Will, countering Bloom Tender. Afterward, Mike casts a Sensei's Divining Top and passes the turn. Ryan plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Human. He casts a Voltaic Key and ships the turn to Dylan. Dylan plays an Island for turn. He casts a Soul Ring. Looking for revenge, Mike pays 2 life and casts Mental Misstep, countering the Soul Ring. All finished, Dylan passes. Dawn plays an Arid Mesa for turn. He cracks it for a Blood Crypt into play tapped. After that, he ends his turn. Mike loses his mana crypt trigger on his upkeep and loses 3 life. He plays an island for turn. After that, Thrasios, Triton Hero, hits the board. He passes his turn. Ryan plays a Chrome Mox, exiling trash for treasure. He casts a Mox Opal. He follows up by casting a Worn Power Stone. All wrapped up, he passes. Dylan plays a Thespian Stage for turn, and passes to Dawn. Dawn plays a Mountain for turn. He casts a Dark Ritual, adding 3 black mana. He casts a Mana Vault. Mike responds by activating his top, looking at the top 3 of his library. After the top trigger and the Mana Vault resolve, Dawn casts Wheel of Fortune. Everyone discards their hand and draws 7. Finished up, Dawn passes to Mike. Mike loses his Mana Crypt trigger on his upkeep and loses 3 life. He casts a Brainstorm. He plays a Mana Confluence for turn. He casts a Demonic Tutor, fetching up a card into his hand. He spends his top to rearrange the top 3. Moving to combat, he attacks Dawn with Thrasios. He passes to Ryan. Ryan plays a Mountain for turn. He casts a Shattering Spree, replicated twice. Mike responds by casting a Force of Will, countering the Shattering Spree. After that, Ryan ends his turn. Dylan plays an Academy Ruins for turn. He activates the ruins to put his Soul Ring on top of his library. He passes to Dawn. Dawn plays a Misty Rainforest for turn. He casts a Mox Diamond, discarding an island. He cracks his Misty Rainforest, fetching up an Underground Sea. Then he casts Kess, Dissonant Mage. He then shifts the turn over to Mike. At the end of Dawn's turn, Mike taps his Mana Confluence to spin the top. Mike loses his Mana Crypt trigger on his upkeep and loses 3 life. He casts a Lotus Petal. He sacks his petal and taps mana to cast Yawgmoth's Will. Dawn takes a look at Mike's library, doesn't like what he sees, and casts Force of Will. Mike responds by casting Spell Pierce. Dawn reluctantly taps his Mana Vault to pay the 2. Mike flips his top to draw a card. He then casts his newly drawn card, which was a Pact of Negation. With that, Force of Will is countered, and Yawgmoth's Will resolves. Mike casts a Lotus Petal from his graveyard. He plays an Underground Sea from his graveyard. He casts a Demonic Tutor from his graveyard, fetching up a card into his hand. He casts a Mox Opal. He sacks his petal to cast Bloom Tender from his graveyard. He taps his Mana Confluence to cast Voltaic Key. He attacks Ryan with Thrasios, and then ends his turn. Ryan plays a Mountain for turn. He casts Boiling Seas. Everyone's islands are destroyed, which isn't very many, but it may be just enough. He follows up by casting a Braid, targeting Bloom Tender. All wrapped up, he passes the turn to Dylan. Dylan plays a Watery Grave into play untapped, taking 2 life. He casts his Soul Ring for the 2nd time. Soul Ring resolves, and Dylan ends his turn. Dawn plays a City of Brass for turn. He casts Cabal Ritual with Threshold, giving Dawn 5 black mana. He taps his City of Brass to then cast Desperate Ritual, giving Dawn 3 red mana. He then attempts to cast Paradox Engine. To everyone's surprise, the engine resolves. Dawn casts a Wheel of Fortune from his graveyard through Kess. Everyone discards their hand and draws 7. Dawn dismays that he has no 0 drops to cast to trigger his Paradox and untap his permanents. Lamenting, he moves to combat, attacks Mike with Kess, and passes the turn. Mike pays for his Pact of Negation trigger on his upkeep, including tapping Mana Confluence. He plays a Polluted Delta for turn. He cracks it for an island. After that, he casts Mystic Remora. All finished, he passes to Ryan. Ryan plays a City of Traders for turn. He casts a Welding Jar. He then casts a Lotus Petal. Seeing his opportunity, he casts Godo, Bandit Warlord. One at a time, everyone passes priority, and Godo resolves. He fetches up Helm of the Host and equips it to Godo. Ladies and gentlemen, Ryan has done it. With 2 opponents hot on his heels, Ryan uses his fast combo of Godo Bandit Warlord to sink the win and take the lightning round. An honorable mention goes out to Dawn with his first win this season and also the fastest, at turn 3. Ryan takes his 3rd match win and is the victor for this season. A big congrats to all the contestants and all of their hard work and tough gameplay throughout this season. That about wraps it up for Season 1, but don't despair. We will be back soon with more great gameplay videos for your viewing pleasure. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.